Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. Once again, I'm back at it with my favourite deck in Legacy, which is Green-Black Turbodepths. So this is a deck that I play a lot on the channel, and I have loads of content about it on my Patreon that you can check out if you're interested. But essentially, we make a 2020, we turn 2020 sideways, we win game. We make it using the Vampire Hexmage, which can strip the counters off the Dark Depths, or we can Thespian stage, which copies it, and the copy doesn't have any counters on. We'll get a 2020. We've got fast mana to power it out. We've got tutors to find it in Sylvan Scrying and these crop rotations over here. We've got ways of protecting it in terms of Caracas. We can use Pithing Needle. We can also protect ourselves from Wasteland, which is the main thing this names. We've also got Not of This World to protect it. We've got some hand disruption to take some problem cards out of the way for us and make sure that we can resolve our spells. And that's basically it. We've got some nice sideboard options as well over here. So we've got ourselves the Abrupt Decays, which can remove Mages of the Moon effects, Blood Moon, Opposition Agent, that sort of jazz, or Ensnaring Bridge if we need to crack through that. We've got another Not of This World and two Sylvan Safekeeper if we need to protect from like Swords to Plowshares. We've got ourselves another Duress if we need to up our hand disruption game. We've got a couple of Collector Ouphe which we can use to stop some of these artifact decks. We were on 3 Collector Ouphes. We've gone down to 2 because there's a lot less of the artifact combo decks than there were before. And we've gone up to 4 Leyline in the Void in the sideboard because there's a lot more Ouphes in the meta right now. And Leyline in the Void is very good at beating them. And this is just a really hard lock on some graveyard decks like Dredge and stuff like that as well. We've also got a Boseiju as another piece of interaction that we can have access to. In our lands, in our main deck, we've got a few little silver bullets. Sejiri Steppe, Ghost Quarter, Boseiju, and Bojuka Bog. This is all very much the stock list I've been playing for a little while now. This is the main deck, I think, is absolutely set in stone for me. There is a build you can play where you cut the 3 once upon a time for a little bit more hand disruption and another Not of This World, but I just like the smoothing effect of the once upon a time, and it's been serving me quite well so far. Alright, that's it with the deck tech. If you want to know more about this deck, by all means, check out my Patreon. And I have lots of videos on my channel with Turbodepths, by all means check that out as well. And while you're there, why not like and subscribe my channel? It does help me and doesn't cost you anything. And if you would like to spend a tiny bit of money for just £1 a month, you can watch my videos early as a YouTube member. Alright, let's do some 2020 action for you lovely people. I don't particularly like this opener, so we're going to mulligan this one. This is also a bit of a tragic one, so we're going to mulligan this. This one looks fine to me. So, Urborg into Pithing Needle, and then we do Dark Depths into Vampire Hexmage, and then we are probably getting rid of the secondary Urborg and the Sylvan Scrying. And then we can maybe use the crop rotation if we draw a green source to protect our creature or get through blockers. Basic swamp. We're getting Thoughtseize. Boom, there goes the Thoughtseize. Not ideal for us. We've already mulled to 5 here. There goes our Pithing Needle. That suggests to me that my opponent is ready to wasteland us. Okay, so here is our Urborg. We can crop rotate this into another Urborg to get through a wasteland here. And I don't know about the Spirit Guide, which is quite a good bonus card to have. Polluted Delta, not a wasteland, but we might be looking at a blue deck, which means counter spells ahoy. But we can get through a daze with the Spirit Guide, and that might be enough. We got an island. We're going to ponder. We are going to ponder. So our opponent knows what they're looking for here, because they have a very good idea of what our deck is since they've seen an opening grip like this. So they're trying to counterspell, they're trying to wasteland, and look for a Brazen Borrower. If they are blue-black Reanimator, they probably have 2 Borrowers in their deck, and then 1 or 2 in the sideboard. We're getting Thoughtseize again. Please don't Thoughtseize me again. Ugh. Yep, that sucks, but it is what it is. No more Vampire Hexmage. Okay, so we're gonna need to resolve a spell, but the spell we need to resolve is probably going to be a crop rotation. We have to play out the Dark Depths here, as awkward as this is, so we can play around a daze because we want our Inquisition to resolve. So we kind of need to clear the way for next turn if we draw any land. Actually, we don't need any land next turn, do we? We can just float 2 and then crop rot this into a Thespian stage and go that way. So we could have gone this turn if we wanted to, but I think we need to at least check what our opponent's working with. They did keep off of the ponder as well. We've got a consider and a ponder. This suggests to me that my opponent is playing Doomsday. I'm going to take the ponder here. This particular situation, the Inquisition was worse than a Duress. But what the Inquisition does hit that is really important in the meta right now is Brazen Borrower, whereas Duress doesn't hit that, which is why we run the 2 Inquisition rather than Duress. A personal tutor. So I can put this into their hand right now with this consider. But probably just going to cast Doomsday next turn. Our Urborg is going to be our downfall here. A Pithing Needle. So we're in a weird situation here, because if we... So we float mana here. So this is going to get Force of Willed, but they're going to cast a Doomsday next turn with Force of Will backup. So we need to make a choice here. So what we can do here is, if we crop rotate and get rid of our Urborg, our opponent can't interact with the additional cost of sacrificing Urborg, which means they won't have the black mana to cast the Doomsday next turn. But we're probably going to get Force of Will. They're probably just going to Force of Will whatever we do. If we wait a turn, we almost certainly die to this Consider they have. So I think we have to make a somewhat strange looking play here. So they're going to Force of Will this. But this will take the Consider out of their hand. And then we can drop the Pithing Needle if they do this. And then they can't fetch without getting rid of their Doomsday. Yeah, so there's their hand. This play looks pretty weird and ugly. Just puts our opponent in a pretty horrible spot as well. So we're both going to be in an awkward spot. Polluted Delta, please. So now they can't fetch anything with this. So down to 1 black mana with a black spell in hand. So it's going to be who draws out of this horrible situation first. Now our opponent has cantrips, which is pretty strong. But our whole deck is dedicated to doing this plan, so we have a lot more ways of getting there. Because we have loads of tutors and stuff, and we only really need land, a couple of lands, and we're probably okay here. Weird situation we're in. Alright, I want this land. Let's exile these. Peculiar little game, this. Okay, so drew a fetch hand they can crack here. So they only need 1 more black mana to go. Elvish Spirit Guide. So 1 mana. And then we crop rotate, and then we don't have enough. So we need 1 more land, and then we can go. So as long as our opponent doesn't put Doomsday on the stack this turn, we've got a shot. They're probably going to go and get them a Surveil land to dig themselves towards some more black mana. But any land that we can tap for mana next turn is good. Alternatively, a Lotus Petal works as well. They got rid of the Duress. A Lotus Petal. Sure. This has the requisite mana to Doomsday now. So maybe we have to shift tact a little bit here. We're going to try and work out what they're putting in their pile. Because we might be able to steal a game using a Ghost Quarter. That might be the plan here. Really interesting and intricate game, even though it's sort of over with quite quickly here. Well, it was not that quickly. It's turn 7, but, you know, it's been just a little flurry of action, and then it's just going to win, like, at a snap. It's not going to be, like, a back-and-forth grinding exercise. But we had some really interesting exchange in the first few turns. So we're going to get to see what our opponent puts in their pile. We can try and work out what the mana they have in their pile is. Because they already have their basic islands. They probably don't have another basic. So we can discount the jewels. They probably have 4 Underground Sea, and then a bunch of fetch lands, and then 1 Cavern of Souls. If they put the Cavern of Souls in the pile, that is annoying for us. We might end up in a situation where we have to Ghost Quarter to shuffle their pile and hopefully buy a little bit more time, but then we're not going to have really any resources to play on. So it's going to be a tight one. This is not a matchup I particularly like playing as Turbodepths, but you sometimes get to steal it because they have to play around a decent chunk of stuff. Also, it should be noted they can't make a Consider pile because the Consider is already in exile, and they can only choose cards from their graveyard or library when they Doomsday for their pile. Okay, how many Lotus Petals? 1, 2, 3 Lotus Petals. So, I mean, they've got a 4th Lotus Petal in there, or are they only playing 3? Hard to tell. What else have we got? We have the Cavern of Souls here. That's interesting to me. So maybe we can steal a game with a Ghost Quarter here. How many Cyclers do they have? They've got Street Wraith, Edge of Autumn, another Street Wraith, and an Edge of Autumn. So they probably don't have any Cyclers left in their deck. Yeah, weird. I guess we're going to see what we draw and see if it changes how I want to approach this game. A Boseiju. Does that change anything here? So the strategy we have to win this game now is a little bit weird. We're going to get rid of our Dark Depths. So we can... The Cyclers are all over here, though. Right? So how many Brainstorms? Okay, let's pull this out and work out what it is. Okay, how many Brainstorms do we have here? 1 Brainstorm, 2 Brainstorm, 3 Brainstorm, just the 3 brainstorms? That mean they have a brainstorm in hand? 1, 2, 3. They're definitely running 4 brainstorms. So one of the cards is a brainstorm. What about ponders? How many ponders are we looking at? 1 ponder, 2 ponder, 3 ponder, 4 ponder. Okay, so they don't have any ponders in the pile. They do have a brainstorm somewhere floating about. What about force of wills? We can probably work this out. 1 force of will, 2 force of will, 3 force of will, 4 force of will. Okay, so those aren't happening. Thoughtseize is a bit hard to tell what they're going to put there. Yeah, not knowing our opponent's exact build is a bit difficult here. How many underground seas? 1 underground sea, 2 underground sea, just 2 underground sea, 3 underground sea. They don't have an underground sea in play. They're definitely going to be running 4 underground seas in this deck, surely. 1, 2, 3. I can't see a 4th one, which means if they have 4 underground seas, then they have an additional mana source in there. This is a really tough call, because we could just try and go off next turn. Our opponent doesn't have Cyclists, but they have a Brainstorm. Can they Lion's Eye Diamond? Maybe that's one of the missing cards. They might be doing one of the Necro Dominance piles, which is one of the new things that these decks try to accomplish. It's kind of some new tech. If they're doing Necro Dominance, they can draw through their pile with the LEDs. They brainstorm, put the Necro Dominance into their hand, cast the Necro Dominance, draw the rest of their pile, have 2 mana and go. That's interesting. Whether or not we play this Boseiju is kind of a big deal. So we can blow up the Necro Dominance. I don't think that's where we want to be. I think we play the Boseiju and we either make a 20/20 and kill our opponent, or if they try and do a Necro Dominance line, then we get to... Actually, do we see a Daze in their pile? That's an important thing to consider here. They should have at least 1 Daze in their pile. I can't see the Daze. So they're going to try and brainstorm with the Daze going. What a weird game. This means we probably are supposed to crop rotate this. Is it the Bojuka Bog or the Boseiju we crop rotate here? Because if we do the Boseiju, we already have a green source in the Spirit Guide. And this gives us a black source, which might be useful. We're not going to need green. Yeah, I wish we didn't play the Boseiju now, actually. Now I just thought about it, because we could have hit a land and then hit another land. I would like to take out the basic island, I think, here. I don't know if this is going to be enough to steal a game or not. But if we had kept the Boseiju, we could have hit this. And then if you find another green source, we can hit the Undercity Sewers. They could have the Brainstorm in hand right now. That would obviously be irritating for us. I assume they won't search their library. What a weird game. There is the Brainstorm. So they could have a Lion's Eye Diamond line. So we might not get another turn. So it might not matter that we played the Boseiju. They have a Lion's Eye Diamond line, so they probably have a way of drawing a card right now. With black mana. Spoils of the Vault. Yeah. So they're just going to go until they hit the Oracle. I don't think we had a line that actually beat this. But maybe we get to see the other cards in their deck so we at least get an idea. Okay, it's Brainstorm. Really intricate game, actually, which is very surprising considering both our decks are trying to windmill relatively fast. Alright, so we don't really care about the Pithing Needles here. We don't really care about the Bojuka Bog. I would quite like this Boseiju as well as the Abrupt Decays. So the Abrupt Decays, we don't really need them that much, actually, think about it. We can blow up some fast mana. We can also blow up Necro Dominance if they're on that build, although they didn't show us the Necro Dominance there. The reason we would normally be boarding in the Abrupt Decays, so we used to board these in for Psychic Frog. We don't have to worry about Psychic Frog anymore, so maybe we don't need the Abrupt Decays, and we can just have like a Not of This World and something like Collector Ouphe just to jam up some of their fast mana. Do we need this Pithing Needle? I think I'd rather have a Collector Ouphe. Let's try this out. Because this stops the Lion's Eye Diamond lines. It stops the Lotus Petals from being mana, which maybe is a thing our opponent is planning on, especially to get round us messing with their other lands. Tricky match to start the league. Okay, I can keep this one. It's a turn 2, which might be fast enough. We can also play around the days a little bit. We can also just send 2 Hexmages. We don't have to worry about wastelands from our opponent's deck either. And we have this little Once Upon a Time that can maybe find us something like a turn 1 Collector Ouphe. That's a possibility. It's one of the reasons we're running Collector Ouphes over the Null Rods at the moment, because we have access to Once Upon a Time to help find it. Elvish Spirit Guide, Bayou. I don't mind having access to a Bayou if things start going wrong. But if things start going wrong, we're probably not getting anywhere. We're just going to take the Spirit Guide, I think. So we can float black, crop rotate. No, we can't do it all this turn. Force of Will is going to be awkward for us. Thoughtseize doesn't actually stop us from being able to deploy a Hexmage next turn. Now, whether or not they have a counterspell and a Thoughtseize, I don't know, because that would obviously be less than good for us. But we have the crop rotation, which can go and find a Sejiri Steppe to protect our Marit Lage once we get it down. I would have liked to turn 1 piece of hand disruption, but I think this hand is pretty reasonable. I don't know how much thinking our opponent is doing on this first turn of theirs. Makes me think that they have some sort of sequence that might be able to kill us on turn 1, which is something that Doomsday can do. That makes it more susceptible to things like Ghost Quarter on their lands to sort of cheese them out. Alright, so we've got a Polluted Delta being cracked here. And a Lotus Petal. This is certainly the start that could win the game on turn 1. If they crack this for a Dark Ritual, then I think we're in some amount of trouble. A Cabal Ritual. Okay, so we're getting Doomsdayed on turn 1. Understood. This might take a while for our opponent to work out the pile, but we'll open the window ready to have a look as soon as they have. And we can try and work out what they've sideboarded against us, as well as what is going into their pile. Our opponent took a while, but they've now assembled a pile. Let's see what they're doing here. They've played a Lotus Petal from their hand. Let's have a look. There's a Street Wraith in here. There is only 1 Street Wraith I can see. Let's just make sure that's true. Okay, 1 Street Wraith. 1 Edge of Autumn. So they might have 2 of those. There is no Lion's Eye Diamond in this pile. So they're going to have the mana from that as probably their option. So Ghost Quartering here doesn't make a great deal of sense. How are we supposed to beat that? How many forces? We've got 2 forces, 3 forces. The Daze is in there. The 4 forces. So none of our spells are getting countered. There's 2 Thoughtseizes. We don't know if they have any more. An interesting proposition, this. They've brought in a Flusterstorm. I don't think the Ghost Quarter makes any difference here. Let's pop out how many Brainstorms we're looking at. All right, one Ponder, 2 Ponder, 3 Ponder, 4 Ponder. Okay, how many Brainstorms? 1 Brainstorm, 2 Brainstorm, 3 Brainstorm. Just the 3? 1, 2, 3. So they have a Brainstorm ready to fire as well. The Consider, is that in the pile? There should be a sort into alphabetical order button. That would be really handy here, wouldn't it? I cannot see the Consider. The Spores of the Vault is not in there, though. So there's no Consider. Alright. So they can Consider and Brainstorm. Okay, so the plan here is to make our 2020 and then disrupt their pile. Oh, hello. That is a very, very useful card for us to have here. We know our spells are resolving. So I think we are just playing out this 2020, and then we're going to use our Spirit Guides to get the Collector Ouphe going. That's going to shut down the Lion's Eye Diamond that we know is in our opponent's pile. I don't know if they can beat this. We know they don't have a Force of Will or a Daze, because we didn't see a Daze, so they only had 1 Daze in the pile, I think, last time. All right, we got the win there. Whew. Okay. What a game. Let's go to the third game. This has been a great match. Again, it's been lots of decisions condensed into a very small space of time in terms of the turns. But it's been surprisingly intricate. Like, our opponent had a really long time building a pile. I think they took about 4-5 minutes to build a pile, which is quite a long time, because the earlier you build a pile, the harder it is to build in certain redundancies, because you don't have the mana, so you need to make sure you have the mana. Then you also have to make sure that you don't get disrupted off of it and can do other bits and pieces. So tried to play around our Ghost Quarter and got caught by our Collector Ouphe. So this hand can make a turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 2020. I will keep this. If we get Thoughtseized ourselves and they take the Hexmage, then we have a turn 3 2020, which is obviously not as good. It's a bit slow. We don't really need the Not of This World based on what our opponents showed us. They didn't have any disruption. They were just trying to go underneath us, but maybe that changes. For game 3, I'm uncertain. Our opponent being on the play is obviously great news for them. It means they can just go in underneath whatever we're doing. Right, and under City Sewers. This is important because it means they don't have access to a Brainstorm to then hide their cards when we Thoughtseize them. So they're going to have to either interact with our Thoughtseize or just let us take a hit. So they kept the card they wanted on top. That is not the ideal situation for us. A Lotus Petal. Does that change anything here? I think we are definitely Thoughtseizing. We probably want to play out the Petals so that you can play around the days here. Let's see what they're working with. We can probably work out what the card on top of their library is based on their hand as well. Or at least have a pretty good guess. And maybe we take a piece out of their hand that makes keeping that card on top worse for them as well. So once we see their hand, we will work out what they would have kept on top, and then we can make a more educated guess with our Thoughtseize. Also, I apologise for having not the old bordered Thoughtseize. I tried to make this build on my account as close to my paper one as possible, but I ended up with these Thoughtseize instead of the nice old border ones. Whenever I play Turbodepths for the channel, I always do it on my account with the nice cards. Obviously, my unlocked one has everything, but when you import the list in, it doesn't give you the nice ones. It just gives you the most recent printings. Just easier on this account. Ramble over and done with. Let's hope our opponent lets his Thoughtseize hit them. Okay. We have a Dark Ritual, a Personal Tutor, a Street Wraith, Brainstorm. A lot of interesting options. So, what would I have kept on top? I think I would probably keep some like Thoughtseize action. I think I would keep a Doomsday because they can just go on turn 2 and kill us. So I think the play here is actually the Dark Ritual rather than one of the other bits. Because this should slow our opponent down enough. Because if they kept Doomsday on top and they just pop it off that next turn, that means that we don't get to attack them before they get to draw their first card from the Doomsday pile, which will probably be enough to beat us. And if they spend this turn personal tutoring for a Doomsday, that's also fine by me. So they're probably going to Brainstorm and do that sort of shenanigans here. I think I want to play this Thespian stage out and then use this to Hexmage and then surprise them with the crop rotation. If they've drawn a Force of Will and fight over this, that's okay for us. Alright, opponent. So they don't know that we're going to be killing them next turn. So they might do a Doomsday past the turn pile. So they're brainstorming. So the fact they didn't personal tutor kind of suggests to me that maybe they have the Doomsday and I was on the right read. So if they tried for a Doomsday past the turn pile, we can try and beat that. There is an option here that we could have crop rotated in response when it's less likely our opponent has a Force of Will. The problem with doing that is our opponent then knows what they have to beat, which changes the way they play. So I'm trying to go with restricting our opponent's information. We're going to see... They don't have another Surveil land, so they might not crack this now unless they have something like a Consider they want to fire off. Okay, they're cracking now. Underground Sea, 4 cards in hand. We don't know what those cards are. So all their lands tapped for blue here, so we can't try and use the remove our own Urborg to stop them having access to black. Or sorry, black. Is this going to be the personal tutor? It is, okay. So they can use the Street Wraith to draw it, and then they can Cabal Ritual to put it into hand, to put it ready to go. I'm going to cast this crop rotation. End step. What are we sacrificing here? That is not the easiest choice here. Because the Thespian stage can get us towards another combo, but if they counterspell this, we're probably losing anyway. And this way you can play a Hexmage. If they have to do a past the turn pile, we can maybe attack them down for enough. So I think I'm going to get rid of the stage for those reasons. If this resolves, we almost certainly win the game. Okay, I will get the Dark Depths. I will make the Dark Depths. We got the GGs over there. And they were very good games. Even though it did look like we were just bodying each other back and forth in some ways, there were some really interesting, intricate plays, and this is the sort of content I like to make. I think there were some really cool decisions, and I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Alright, let's go on to round 2. We are 1-0. Alright, what does this opener do for us? We can Verdant Catacombs, get a Bayou. Use this Sylvan Scrying on turn 1 to get a Dark Depths. Turn 2, we can play the Lotus Petal and cast the Dark Depths, cast the Hexmage. Okay, so this is a turn 2 2020. I will keep this. We do need to get a Bayou with this, and we do need to use a Spirit Guide and then save the Lotus Petal for the black mana on the Hexmage. The Sejiri Steppe being in our hand can be a little bit annoying, but it might be a thing that we get to use to push through blockers rather than crop rotate 4 to protect. So it still has uses even in our hand. Our opponent has mulligan to 5. How worried about that should I be? Who knows? So we're going to go get ourselves a Bayou. Alright, so we're going to Sylvan Scrying. So they pitched a Daze to this Forcible. So our opponent's now got a 3-card hand. Now we have the ability to Sylvan Scrying to get our Dark Depths again. And if we can find an untapped mana source, ideally a black mana source, then we are absolutely cooking here. Undercity Sewers. So I suspect our opponent is either on Reanimator or Tempo. It could still be Doomsday or something like that. Hard to say. Okay, I don't mind having access to this one. We can play this one out. We can play out the Lotus Petal here. We can cast another Sylvan Scrying, this time around a Daze. Alright. So we have access to an unacountable 2020 next turn. Our opponent's deck could have some number of Brazen Borrower in. A Wasteland. Okay. Well, that is something we have to work through. It is something that we can work through. It's a little bit awkward, but we have ways around it. We could obviously just draw a Pithing Needle, but we didn't. So what is the strategy here? We can deploy this Hexmage and the Sejiri Steppe, and then follow up with the Dark Depths. And then we have 2 ways of doing it. I think that is the play here. We could slow right down and just Inquisition our opponent's hand. Alright, I'm going to play this Hexmage out. A Brainstorm in response. So we can just float the Dark Depths in play so that they can never Wasteland without us going off in response, but a single removal spell breaks that up. So I think the play here is to get the Hexmage down, play the Sejiri Steppe just so we have more mana available, and then we can have 2 activations here. So we activate using the Hexmage first, and then they respond, and then we get it. Okay, and in 2, that is not what I want to see. That is a shuffle, though. That might not be them reanimating a creature this turn. It could be them reanimating a creature, though. It is them reanimating a creature. Okay, understood. I'm going to remove all the counters from your Archon of Cruelty. Take that, Archon of Cruelty. So we need to draw a Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle's not even... Pithing Needle is okay here. We can win on the turn after. And once upon a time, we've already cast some spells here. I think our opponent has us. A Boseiju and another Thespian's Stage. Whatever we take here is getting discarded, so it doesn't really matter here. So we play this, so we can keep this in hand. So we take 9. I don't think we have any way to win this game. So they attack us for 9. We can't do anything about that. We discard a card. So if we play the Dark Depths out, then they can just Wasteland it and then we're never getting anywhere. If we keep this in hand, we discard this, and we don't play a land this turn. So they can't Wasteland us. But then the following turn, we need to play this. We have our 2 mana. How are we going to beat this Wasteland? I don't think we have a way around this. I think I'm just going to scoot this one up and go to game 2. So, we have a selection of tools we require for this game. So we want reanimation stuff here. We also want some number of Abrupt Decay, because Abrupt Decay answers Harbinger of the Seas. We do not require a... where is it? The Boseiju. It is a green source, but we don't actually need the effect of this that often. Actually, let's have a think. The metrics are changing slightly because the deck is a little bit different. So because we're boarding all these things, the Once Upon a Time looks bad. So the Once Upon a Times come out. We still need access to the Not of This World. We still need access to this to stop Pithing Needle. We need to stop the Wastelands. This is kind of the problem with the blue-black reanimated deck, because it attacks you on so many angles, because it has the counter spells you need to get through. It also has their big combo game plan, but then it also has like just the Wastelands as well. It's just many, many fronts for us to try and beat them on. So I think we're going to trim back on a couple of Spirit Guides. How much are we going to play around Harbinger of the Seas? I think we can take out one of these Abrupt Decays. They only have 2 Brazen Borrower, but they probably have a 3rd in the sideboard. I think I'm going to take out one of the Thoughtseizes. It's a weird hand. It really wants me to draw an Urborg. I don't think I can keep this one. We're not losing to their unfair plan, which is basically the only thing that beats us. But I don't think I can keep a hand that looks like this. I guess this is a really answer-rich hand. So we answer their graveyard plan, we answer their wastelands, and we answer their borrower with this hand. We just need to find black mana. Alright, we're going to keep this on for science. So if they have to spend their borrower on our Leyline, then that's not so bad. Because that means our Dark Depths is more likely to do its thing. The Hexmage is a little bit awkward sometimes against the Reanimator decks because you can't use this to deal with an Archon in an appropriate fashion. So we've got basic into this Pithing Needle. We will name Wasteland, and we will move on. The Blue-Black Reanimator deck is still the best deck in Legacy. In terms of challenge results, it's put up more top 8s than any other deck since the bannings. Okay, so we found our black source. We don't need a second green here, so we can just get the swamp. Start chipping away at our opponent's hand here. Is this a turn we fire this off? That is another question. So if we draw a black source next turn, we're going to want access to... I guess if we draw exactly Urborg. If we draw exactly Urborg, then we're going to want to keep... Yeah, I think we also can have crop rotation. I think we're just going to fire this in now. Get the information. All right, we're getting a Force of Will pitching Murktide Regent. I guess Murktide Regent isn't doing much else right now while the Leyline is kicking about. That suggests to me that my opponent has access to a Brazen Borrower in their hand. That is the sort of thing that they would want to protect in this situation for numerous reasons. Alternatively, they could have no lands and no real spells they can cast, and they're relying on this Brainstorm to find them a land. They did keep the card on top. Did they keep the card on top? No, they surveilled away the Attractor. Alright. So maybe they were just finding a land. That is certainly some information we can try and glean from our opponent. We'll pop out their exile zone so we have a little idea of what's come and gone. They're Thoughtseizing us. They can see one of our Hex Mages into the bin, but we still have another one. They could surgically extract this if they wanted to, if that's something they brought in. Okay. I believe we play out the Dark Depths. Because we have the Wasteland covered by the Pithing Needle, this way we can draw into Thespian stage next turn and pop off. Our opponent was joking about how it feels wrong to say you're a fan and then Archon of Cruelty them. But if you want to beat somebody whose content you watch, you tell them you're a fan, and then the gods will have a nice way of doing that. Okay, I'm going to play out this Lotus Petal. Play out this Hexmage. We don't need to go right now because our opponent isn't doing anything. We can just ping away with this. The problem here is if they go for a Orcish Bowmasters. Okay, they have a Petty Theft on our Leyline of the Void. That is very scary. Why would you be doing that and not Petty Thefting our little 2020 when it comes up? This means they can probably Entomb, Reanimate Archon right now. So this is what I was saying earlier about the problem with the Vampire Hexmage. Because if they reanimate the Archon like this, we can't make our 2020 because we have to sacrifice it immediately. Let's remove all the counters from their Archon. It's the principle of the thing. At least we have something we can discard pretty happily here. So we're looking for Thespian stage or crop rotation. Those are our outs here. Because we can make this after that trigger's gone. Bojuka Bog. Very funny. Would I rather have a Bojuka Bog in place so I have another additional black source? Or would I have this... Yeah, it's the Bojuka Bog every time here, right? Okay. So we take 9 from this, and then we have one turn to draw crop rotation or Thespian stage. So we have 8 draws. The Thespian stage is obviously the better of those draws because our opponent can't really interact with it very well. My own stats that I record from playing games, this matchup is favourable. It's it's like a 55% matchup, so it's, that's pretty reasonable. Obviously, I haven't had that many games versus the new build since the bannings, but whilst it had Psychic Frog and it was a better deck, we had a positive matchup. So I'm curious to see how it pans out now. But there's obviously always ways this deck can beat people. That's why it's the best deck. Alright, deck, what do you got for us? Thespian stage, and we're still in this one. Ooh, there it is. All right, we're not dead. This is where our opponent has one of their borrowers in their hand. They tend to run 3 borrowers in the 75. I have even seen 4. But they attack, we take 3, we make our guy, we block with the guy. So let's trigger resolve. And then we have the play that we have. So one of the issues here is that our opponent can then have another borrower like this. Yeah, okay, that's the game. I was going to say they have a borrower, or they can just let this die and then reanimate it. Yeah, that went horribly for us. This sort of shows you how powerful this deck can be. Also, the Leyline and the Void is a worse piece of graveyard disruption against specifically a Reanimator compared to Fairy Macabre. Because the Leyline and the Void is face up, so they know what they're playing around. Whereas Fairy Macabre, they can go for it, you blow them out with the Fairy Macabre. Also, we can dig for it using Once Upon a Time, so it changes our sideboard mapping. However, Ouphe Spells is the 3rd most popular deck right now, which is why we're running the Leylines. So I think that goes better for us if we have the Fairy Macabres instead, because they just send it, we exile it, we don't have to deal with this. So I think switching to Leylines is actually making us slightly worse in this matchup. So maybe, since this is the best deck, it's not the most played deck though, but it's just converting the most. So maybe as this raises up, when people see it's still really good, we'll probably need to go back to Fairy Macabres, but that's just something to be aware of. All right, let's go to round 3. Okay, we've got a bit of a classic banger here. Turn 1, Urborg Thoughtseize. Turn 2, Dark Depths. Turn 3, Thespian Stage. Not too shabby. We can keep this one. We do need to Thoughtseize on 1 because our opponent could be playing a deck where they get to just pop off and kill us on turn 1. So we need to be able to disrupt them if they're a combo deck. And we play the Urborg out because if we draw a Vampire Hexmage, we can just go on turn 2. Let's get our Thoughtseize going. Let me see what you're working with there, opponent. We're a painter player. This is pretty good news for us. So the card we want to take most here is... We don't have any fast mana, which is what I'm worried about here. So I believe we take the Goblin Engineer because this can just find them a Ensnaring Bridge. So I think we take the Engineer here. Now, what we don't want to see here is our opponent have the ability to play Painter's Servant and then Red Blast our Dark Depths when it's a blue permanent. That's what we're trying to avoid here. This is a good matchup for us in general. I think on my data it's somewhere around the 60%, 60 to 70% is like quite good in my experience. Okay, we have perfect information. They're going to play an Urza Saga game. That is okay for me. Once Upon a Time. We don't get to cast that unless we pitch our Lotus Petal to do so. Do we even need to do that though? I don't believe we do. I think I'm going to play this Thespian Stage. I'm going to play out this Lotus Petal. And then I'm going to pass. So we should be able to make a 20-20 before our opponent pops their Urza Saga. So the one thing we're trying to dodge right now is our opponent having a Simian Spirit Guide. There is the Painter's Servant. So what could we find with this Once Upon a Time that would matter here? That is the real question. There isn't really anything that would make any difference here. So I think we're just supposed to leave this in case we draw a Crop Rotation this turn, then we can at least try and protect our creature. So we need to make our creature now. Actually, we're just dead to a Grindstone, aren't we? That is the Urza Saga pops next turn, right? And then they just go get the Grindstone, we die. Whoops. Okay, not ideal. We were dead before then. I don't think it makes a difference because they didn't have the Urza Saga in hand when we Thoughtseize, so I think we took the right thing when we did. It just didn't pan out that way because they drew the Saga on 1. So there's a bunch of options we have to take out in this matchup. And there's a bunch of things we want. So Abrupt Decays, Boseiju, Collector Ouphe. These are all pretty solid options. If you want to keep the Bojuka Bog in as an option, we have to forego something else. I don't think we want the Bojuka Bog. Not enough from what our game plan is. When we're tutoring that, it's not great. So we could board in something like Leyline just to stop like Welder shenanigans. But the way we're trying to stop Welder shenanigans is Needles and Abrupt Decay. Actually, I'm going to swap one of these petals out for a Needle here. Is that... The only problem with doing this is it makes us slightly colder to Blood Moon. I'm going to trim down on an Inquisition instead, just to keep the Lotus Petal in. Now, it does seem it's one of those things where we have Lotus Petals and they have the Collector Ouphe. It's just the way things go sometimes. So what does this hand do? We have turn 1, Verdant Catacombs, turn 2, Thespian Stage. That gives us 3 mana in total on turn 2. So we could use that mana to not really get anywhere. Unless we draw another piece of fast mana. Alternatively, we could turn 1, Verdant Catacombs, Spirit Guide, Sylvan Scrying for something. So that would get us the Dark Depths. And we'd also have the crop rotation. I just don't like this one enough. I think we're jumping through too many hoops when our deck is more powerful than this. What about this one? There's a lot of stuff going on here. This is a turn 2. So you go turn 1 stage, turn 2 Dark Depths, and we get to funnel this fast mana in. Okay, this seems fine to me. We'll drop the Ghost Quarter so we can use the Lotus Petal as a Thoughtseize on turn 1. And then we just go on turn 2. Our opponent's mulligan to 5, so our Thoughtseize looks pretty solid. Although we did Thoughtseize last time and it wasn't good enough. Play this one out. Thoughtseize our opponent. Ensnaring Bridge, Painter's Servant, Goblin Welder. We're going to win, in theory, before they Ensnaring Bridge here. So if they draw another piece of fast mana and then get the bridge in. This is a really good hand, and that's a pain for us. So we take the Welder and hope they don't draw a piece of fast mana or a land. That doesn't seem great. We take the bridge and they go turn 1 Welder, turn 2 Painter, weld in the bridge. Ugh. This is not a good situation for us. The chances of them finding mana are quite high. I think we take the bridge and then force them to weld their Painter into a bridge. And then try and draw through it. Oh, this is such a horrible hand for us to play against. We could take the Spirit Guide. And that might slow them down enough. Because they would need a soul land to be able to do this on curve. Alright, it's the Spirit Guide. Just take their mana out. Make that bridge the hardest to get into play as possible. Because we have a turn 2 2020. So they have to draw a soul land to get there. Don't draw a soul land, opponent. Not a soul land. I'm going to play out a Painter. We need to make this in response. Just in case they have... I guess they can't have Sylvan Spirit Guide here. What am I talking about? Alright, let's just make 2020. Boom. Only one permanent in play. But it's our favourite permanent. Okay. That went pretty well. How do I feel about these Ensnaring Bridges? Like, we have 6 answers to Ensnaring Bridge, as well as being able to just pluck it out of our opponent's hand. We didn't see any Blood Moon action, but that doesn't mean they don't have it. I think I'm inclined to stay as we are here. The other option is we strip out a Pithing Needle for a Duress, but a Pithing Needle can help us out versus Welders and things. Right, I think we're just going to go in like this. This hand does what exactly? It does things very slowly. We can do better. So this has a Thoughtseize. We can go and find our land. So this hand is very good against a Blood Moon. Like, this hand wants our opponent to play Blood Moon. But is our opponent willing to play a Blood Moon for us? Like, we do have access to the Dark Depths. We're just waiting for one other card. I think we're going to keep this because at least it answers one of the problem cards for us. And we probably need to get rid of... Are they going to Blood Moon us on turn 1? If they Blood Moon us on turn 1, we want to throw back the Verdant Catacombs. Sorry, not the Verdant Catacombs. The Verdant Catacombs. Okay, we'll throw back the Verdant Catacombs and just play it super safe. If they're on like a weird Karn build, that could jam us up with this Petal a little bit. And Urza's Saga, sure. So we can Urborg, have a little crack at our opponent's hand. Okay, so now we're just cooking with gas. So let's Thoughtseize our opponent. Blood Moon, Painter's Servant, Pyroblast. I understand what you're trying to accomplish there, opponent. So I think we take the Painter's Servant, so I don't want to get comboed out here. And we can beat 1 Blood Moon, and hopefully we're on the time frame where we only have to worry about 1 Blood Moon. So this turn, we Sylvan Scrying, go and get the Dark Depths. Next turn, our opponent plays the Blood Moon. Then we untap, play the Dark Depths, comes in with no counters. We play the Lotus Petal, and then we blow up the Blood Moon in response to them casting a second Blood Moon or another spell. I suspect our opponent is going to go and get a piece of fast mana like a Lotus Petal just to make sure they can get the Blood Moon in. But we don't have to worry about them comboing us because we took the Painter. And we're on the time frame where we beat the Blood Moon. Pithing Needle. That is an unexpected choice. They're going to name Thespian Stage. Okay, now they're going to play the Blood Moon. This is why Blood Moon is not always the best. Like, 2 Blood Moons is very good against us, but 1 Blood Moon does not really work. I'll play this Lotus Petal. I will play this Dark Depths. I will pass the turn. Oh, I don't have retro-bordered Abrupt Decays either. Apologies, everyone. So if they cast a Blood Moon, in response, we blow up their existing Blood Moon. Boom. Make 2020. There it is. Beautiful. Yeah, so this matchup is like a 70% matchup for us. The combination of Pithing Needles, Collector Ouphes, and using our own opponent's Blood Moons and stuff, it just works really well for us. And I hope I demonstrate that. Let's go to round 4. Welcome to round 4. What does this hand do? Nothing really. Let's mulligan. What does this hand do? I like this one. So we have turn 1, Urborg, Pithing Needle. That's not a bad way to start getting advantage of the Gathering, is it? And then we have turn 2, play out the stage or the depths. So there is an option here where we play turn 1 Thespian Stage in case we draw another piece of fast mana. So statistically, that is the best way for us to keep this hand. So we probably keep this, and I don't think we want this scrying. So if our opponent has, okay, Tropical Islands, we could be looking at like some sort of Nadu deck. Let's see what we draw and see if it changes what we want to play out first. Okay, I know what we're playing out first this time. Okay, understood. Just in case they're like Bug Beans or something, we want to get our Pithing Needle down. So there is an argument to play this naming Nomads in Core. But we're going to name the Wasteland and stick to our plan. We have a turn 2 2020. Will we resolve that turn 2 2020? Will it be good enough? I don't know. If our opponent is one of the Nadu decks, they're not great for us. I think Breakfast is okay. I think the Nadu Zenith deck is horrific for us and one of our worst matchups. And then the Nadu Elves is a bit of a weird one. I think it's favourable to them, but it's not like a 70% matchup for them. Okay, I will play this Dark Depths out. I'll play this Hexmage around a daze secretly. We also have protection via this Not of This World. What are you up to there, opponent? We got Surveil going. I would like to see more of my opponent's deck, but 2 blue-green sources is certainly making me think Nadu. What do you got here, opponent? A daze. And then we got Brainstorm. Can I have my Hexmage, please? No, they got a Force of Will. Address down. Okay, so our opponent is probably in the control ballpark. What they don't know is that we can send it next turn uncounterably. This is why you mulligan hands. You can have a powerful hand with 5 cards, even 4 cards. You do not need to keep a substandard... Oh, wow. Our opponent is on some other stuff over there. Mosswort Bridge. So this is like some sort of weird Dreadnought list. We could attempt to blow this up if we really want to. But I think we're just going to present a kill. So our opponent is on Bridge Naught, or whatever you want to call it. So what they do is they cast a Dreadnought and then they get a card off of this. And it could be an Emrakul and kill us. Because they do cast it. But it's just one of those things that we have to try and get through. Did they set up what was in this? I can't remember. Brainstorm, Fetch Land, Brainstorm. They probably set it up. Do they have the Dreadnought to go with it? We don't have access to green mana right now, so we can't use this crop rotation. We've done like this big pause in their second main phase. Are we getting Emrakul? No. We've got 3 cards in hand. I came to game. Let's fire this up. Like, especially since we've seen the Mosswall Bridge, we know things can go very wrong for us if we give them more time. So we definitely have to send it here. Right. Green mana. Green mana. No? I think you want blue mana. Address down. Alright. What is the play here? Nothing. Excellent. Okay, so I think our opponent is just green-blue. I don't really know what else is going on in their deck. I think I would like some access to a Duress. I would like a Boseiju. I think I want some combination, some amount of Abrupt Decay. I do not believe this is a matchup where we want Bojuka Bog. They probably have a sideboard Uro plan, but I don't think we care about that enough. The Pithing Needle can name... Wasteland can name the... what's it called? Mosswort Bridge. I hope I've got the name of that one right. I think if we're boarding all these things in, we'd probably want to board out the Once Upon a Times. And that takes us to around 61, so I reckon we'll probably just trim a needle here. And then we can reappraise the situation if there's a game 3. I imagine they're going to have some number of Brazen Borrowers. There is an argument to play a 4th Abrupt Decay over one of the Novice Worlds or the Pithing Needles here. I think we can just try and race a Dreadnought. What does this hand do? This is a turn 2 2020 that has to resolve one spell to do that. Sure. A lot of this world is quite a nice draw to have here. I don't believe our opponent played any sort of... I think we play out the Lotus Petal now. This means if our opponent fetches a basic and then wastelands us out of nowhere, we can maybe copy their basic land if that's the thing we are in the market for doing. Alright, Hedge Maze, what are you surveilling away? Nothing. They're leaving it on top. That's not ideal for us. Our opponent's deck does look cool. I think Bosch and Roll played something similar a while back. Alright, so we have a wasteland we need to beat here. They also have Stifles in their deck. Do I care about this enough to do anything about it? Can we do anything about it? No. Black Source. A Pithing Needle. A little bit late deck. A little bit late. I think we're just deploying the Sejiri Steppe here. We have to take this a little bit slower. We've got a lot of protection. We've got a lot of interference with what our opponent's doing. They have shown us they are playing Wasteland, so that's good information to have. I'm glad I kept hold of the Pithing Needles. I wonder if they are playing Harbinger of the Seas. Like, it's a perfectly fine thing. You just say, I'm not going to do my Mosswort Bridge. I'm just going to use this to ruin your day and just play some Dreadnought action. Right, that is a Phyrexian Dreadnought. We can afford to take one hit from this. There is a Stifle. We require a little bit of help here. A Boseiju. That's not nothing, is it? We don't need to kill this now. I think we do need to play out our Dark Depths. And just get that on board. And then I think we are playing the Pithing Needle. So they're fetching so that we can't name their land. That's perfectly reasonable. So we'll name the Wasteland. So they can stifle our Boseiju. So it's not just a free way of removing their guy, like it is against some decks. So the plan is draw a Black Source, play the Hexmage. Now if we draw an Urborg, we get to Thoughtseize and then play it. And our 2020 can just block this Dreadnought. Because 12/12 is minuscule in comparison to the almighty power of Merit. And if we don't have anything that works, we at least have the option of trying to kill it next turn with a Boseiju. It will cost us our Spirit Guide, but that's better than costing us our Lotus Petal because we're trying to hit black at the moment. Our opponent's doing a fair amount of cantripping. Flooded Strand. Are you going to reveal white mana? I don't think they get to play white mana in their build with Mosswort Bridges, but maybe I'm wrong. Urborg, please. That is not an Urborg. If we play this, if we go for the Urborg right now, if it resolves, then we're okay. So it's a case of, are we trying to win the game or not lose the game and then try and win it later? So we could just try and take the safe route and Boseiju this out, and then next turn try and get our Sylvan Scrying going. This is a tough call. I think I'm going to go for the Sylvan Scrying here. We can pay around a daze. It has to be exactly Force of Will. Okay, we're just in, are we? So we can then Thoughtseize our opponent here. We could just try and make a 2020, but the 2020 is not that likely to resolve. Hey, let the Sylvan Scrying go, though. So we have some options here. If we make the Hexmage and it resolves, we can make a 2020, then we can Boseiju this. But if they have a Stifle and just stifle our... Like, if they have a Stifle, they beat our Boseiju. They also beat our thing, but they don't beat the Thoughtseize. Okay, I think we're just going to take this slightly safer here. Let's just see what they're cooking with, and then we can Boseiju this away. If they show us 2 Stifles, then, well, we're not beating that anyway. I'm very surprised that Sylvan Scrying resolved. I guess they weren't in fear of some of the things we could put out. Just a Veil of Summer. A crop rotation. Okay. I will allow this. I will not respond with my Boseiju. A Mosswort Bridge. So this is a Mosswort Bridge on an empty board. So, sorry, on a random library. Why is it empty board? Okay, they have a Dress Down, they have a Force of Will. We will take the Force of Will. And we will now Boseiju this while we can. They can get a land here, but they don't get to activate their Mosswort Bridge. Next turn, we can play the Hexmage. We know they have a Dress Down, so they can play the Dress Down at a timing of their choice. So they can play it in response to the Hexmage, and then try and find an answer off of the Dress Down. They can play it in our turn to... They can play it later on to try and turn something off. Or they can just cycle it right now. I think we're in an okay spot, but our opponent definitely has draws that can ruin our day. Which is a phrase I say a lot, but it's good to be aware of it. Okay, we don't care about this. It can chump block for a turn. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. Dress Down goes away. Okay, that's close to being very interesting. Black, black. Let's make the friend. We can pay around a days. I'm not expecting split-second spells. Like, we did mulligan to keep this hand. Like, it's not... Well, we've drawn some reasonable stuff. Don't get me wrong. But our deck is quite powerful. I think a lot of people underestimate Turbodepths as a deck. And you can mulligan quite deep and have some solid hands because of the amount of resources you need to go on. But, you know, we have this Sejiri Steppe that we don't really want in our hand. And this Abrupt Decay is not really something we wanted either. Like, the rest of the stuff pretty good. But we did board in an extra Boseiju, so we have more access to Boseijus. Alternatively, Abrupt Decay would have done the exact same thing with the mana we had. So we effectively had 5 or 6 copies of this effect. So it made it like we drew pretty good, but we also have a lot of these things to draw because our deck is designed to hit the things it needs to hit. We'll have a lot of redundancy is what I'm trying to say. They're going to be very annoyed if they have a bounce spell and we just not of this world. I would very much like to draw a green source. Now, if we draw a green source, that's quite fortunate. Let's make it 2020. An Inquisition of Kozilek. I would like to fire this off and just see what our opponent is working with. Show and tell, show and tell. Okay, so they've got Emrakul type stuff going on over there. Let's bash. They did shuffle off their ponder, so they are drawing randomly. So if they show and tell in an Emrakul, we get to make them chump block with it. There's not many decks that get your opponent to chump block with Emrakul. We have that delightful distinction. Show and tell. What have you got? An Emrakul. A chump blocking Emrakul. Okay. Put this out. Go attacks. So now they got nothing. Battle of the Squiddy Diddlies. A Phyrexian Dreadnought. Sure. If there's an Emrakul underneath this, then we lose the game probably. It's a Stifle. Okay, so they just get a Dreadnought and then they die to our guy in the air. Our opponent's saying that we did some gross stuff, but they did, you know, they show and tell Emrakul, they Phyrexian Dreadnought with Stifle twice in this game. Like, they were doing some pretty gross stuff too. That's legacy for you. Alright, that is 4 rounds in, and we are 3-1. So we just need one more to pick up a tasty 4-1, but we have the positive record locked in. Let's go. Okay, we are into the final round. What does our hand do? That is a good question. We can remove 1 ice counter. No, we can Sylvan Scrying on 1. That doesn't really get us anything. I think I want to mulligan this one. Where it's kind of all dressed up with nowhere to go, and this one is just nothing. So we're going to be going to 5. This does not have access to a 2020. We have... So if this was a 5-card hand, we would keep... No, I think we go to 4. Okay. What are we doing with this little customer? Thespian stage, forest, crop rotation, land, and spirit guide. So this just needs to find one more mana source. That's not bad. Like, it's not great, but it's not bad. And I'll take not bad. Leyline of the Void. Alright, our opponent's probably going to cast Helm of Obedience at some point in this game. We'll play this forest first, so that we have the ability to crop rotate on lower resources if we need to wipe our opponent's graveyard for some reason. At least our opponent didn't discard any of our cards. Okay, so we have a 2020 next turn. Or we get to kill our opponent with a 2020 next turn. They're not going to expect that. This is why we mulligan, right? We mulligan to 4. They just have a swamp. Are we going to get Dark Ritual Opposition agented? It's certainly a thing that could happen, isn't it? But we're just going to play the hand we've been dealt here. Oh wow, we didn't. This is why you mulligan aggressively with this deck. Alright. A very clean turn 2 win on a multi-4. What do we want for our opponents? We would like a Boseiju, please. I think the Duress probably has some merit, and I am expecting something like an opposition agent. We do not need Not of This World, and I do not believe we need the Bojuka Bog. So that's some of the things we're getting rid of. I don't know if our opponent is running Wasteland. If we're boarding in all of these things, the Once Upon a Time looks a little worse, so we can probably trim on those. We could play the Collector Ouphe. What the Collector Ouphe does is stops Helm specifically, if that's the thing we're interested in doing. Do we have enough stuff to beat Helm otherwise? Probably might be a little tricky. I'll have an extra, a 5th Pithing Needle is what we're counting that as. Alright, we'll try this one. So black decks do not kill Marit Lage, they make you sacrifice it. So you don't need the stuff for that. So what does this hand do? Not a lot. I think we can mulligan. What does this hand do? We go turn 1, black source, we can Thoughtseize them, or we can Sylvan Scrying, and then the next turn we have to then Sylvan Scrying again, and then we get to go off. We do have the Boseiju, but we have to get rid of one of these cards in order to do that. So we're probably getting rid of... that is a tough call. Maybe we get rid of the Lotus Petal. So we go turn 1, Thoughtseize, turn 2, Sylvan Scrying, turn 3, Sylvan Scrying. This hand doesn't feel great. This is like a turn 5, 2020? Turn 4? So turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, 2020. That is quite slow. Is one piece of disruption and the potential for a Boseiju enough to keep this? What could we draw to speed this up? A crop rotation would speed up a little bit. A Vampire Hexmage would speed up a bunch. Alright, we're going to keep this one. I'm going to try it out. And what did I say we get rid of? I think it was the Lotus Petal, wasn't it? Or is it the Spirit Guide? I'm not a lover of this hand. But I think it's going to be interesting to try it out. We're getting Thoughtseized. They can't take our Boseiju. Are you just going to take one of our Scryings? They did take one of our Scryings. Okay, so we get to Thoughtseize them. Quite like seeing that. I don't think I'm worried about Wastelands from our opponent. I think they're going to be running a bunch of like Soul Lands and stuff instead. So I'm just going to take this Bayou out. And then I'm going to Thoughtseize our opponent. A Downfleet Voidwalker and a bunch of Soul Lands, just like I suggested. Right, I'll play out this Lotus Petal. We have another tutor, so we are close to where we need to be here. So play out Ancient Tomb. We're going to have a choice on our turn whether we cast Sylvan Scrying or just hold up the Boseiju. Okay. I think we are still... This is an awkward one, isn't it? Because if we Boseiju... Like, if we hold up the Boseiju, that's fine. Like, if we play the Sylvan Scrying, we have to get rid of the Boseiju or our Lotus Petal. I think we probably get rid of the Boseiju. Well, not get rid of it, but we get it into play. But that lets us win the turn after. Or 2 turns after. Am I willing to take that? I don't think we need to, is the thing. But if our opponent... I guess if our opponent has a discard spell, it doesn't matter. Then we just hold. Would have liked to have drawn a land there instead of that crop rotation. Because then we can at least make a decision about just going shields down for 1 turn. This is going shields down for all the turns until we win. Felmire. Okay. Can I have a mana source, please? Another Thoughtseize. That's not the one we wanted. So now we're in the same position yet again. I think we're going to hold again. Because we don't have to risk losing this game. Because our opponent isn't presenting anything other than the Helm combo. I'd love to just keep drawing lands here. That's a land. Any land will do. We also have to worry about Sejiri Steppe. It's not Sejiri Steppe. Shoulder's Edict. I just played the Sejiri Steppe. Come on, brain. Last game of the night. So now we can Thoughtseize and still hold up the Boseiju if we want to. Another Boseiju. Okay, so now we get to play the Boseiju. And we can Sylvan Scrying here. Go and get the Dark Depths. And still hold up the Boseiju. Now, our opponent might think that we are shields down on Boseiju now. But we've just drawn another one. When are we going to get this in old border? That's what I want to know. City of Traitors. Our opponent has some manas. An Abrupt Decay. Sure. So, this Thoughtseize is our opponent. And then we have 1, 2, 3 mana available here. So we can just go and get the Urborg. And then we can go and get... We can sack this, go and get the Thespian stage. And then we have enough mana. So we Thoughtseize, check the coast is clear. 2 Dark Rituals and an Urborg. I understand why they're not playing the Urborg here. And we can hold up to stop them from killing us with the Helm. All we need to do is have them not draw a Shoulder's Edict. If they draw a Helm, that's not even that bad for us because it slows us down a turn, but we can just get rid of that and not have to worry about them top decking a thing that wins the game. So we'll float. Do we need to float this mana? It doesn't need to be any particular colours, actually, does it? So I will crop rotate away this Sejiri Steppe. An opposition agent. What is the play here? That was a very good draw for our opponent. If we can crop rotate in response now, in response to this, we can't get something that kills the opposition agent. They can go and get a Ghost Quarter, which is a little bit irritating, but I can live with that. So if we crop rotate now and get the... Okay, that's what we're doing, I guess. We don't get to make the 2020 now is the only issue. But I can live with that. We could take our own Ghost Quarter so they can't have it, but again, I don't care enough about that for right now. I'm almost certainly expecting them to take that. It could take the Thespian stage so that we can't... So they can then make a 2020, but we're going to make a 2020 on our turn, I think. That does expose us to Helm on this exact turn, but they would have to have runner, best draws in their deck. And I think I can do without that. Maybe we could have played this differently and crop rotated in our opponent's upkeep so they couldn't draw the opposition agent. Yeah, I think that's on us, actually. Oh, we did anticipate opposition agent being a thing they had. They should just go and get the Ghost Quarter. They get Trixie and try... Or the exile. They did get the Ghost Quarter. Okay. So we are in a situation where our opponent can win the game next turn. But I think we are in for trying to win the game ourselves. Just give them one draw out of their deck. Yeah, we didn't need to give our opponent this chance. We should have played around the opposition agent. Alright, do you draw Helm of Obedience? They did not draw Helm of Obedience, but we played that last game a bit sloppy at the end. What we should have done is in their upkeep, we can just crop rotate for those things and... actually, no, we can't, I don't think, because we're not going to have the green mana to Boseiju after we do those crop rotations, so we had to wait until end of turn so we didn't lose to the Helm, I believe. What lands do we have in play? Let's wind it back quickly. So we had these 2 lands in play. We also had the Thespian stage. No, we had the Dark Depths, and we had a Lotus Petal and a Sejiri Steppe. So this was tapped. So we had the Sejiri Steppe we floated mana from, and then we tapped the Boseiju to go and crop rotate. So we could have done that in the upkeep and gotten the Urborg to give us the mana. But then if we crop rotate, the only green source we have is 1 green source, so we don't get to do it. Yeah. So we didn't actually play that one sloppy. We played it in a way where we were playing around our opponent drawing Helm that turn, and they didn't. and they drew the opposition agent. So we then had to play around and not drawing Helm on the next turn. So maybe statistically speaking, it's better for us to go then and give them one turn to not draw Helm and do it in their upkeep. I guess we could have crop rotated once. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Obviously, it didn't matter because we won, but it's important to think this through. I think we put ourselves in a position where we gave our opponent 2 draw steps instead of 1. But one of the draw steps that they were drawing to wouldn't have won the game because we were holding up. And this one didn't win the game on its own. So the only way we get punished there is if our opponent has exactly a sequence of opposition agent into Helm or removal spell. It's just interesting to think about. Anyway, a 4-1 league. We lost to the blue-black Reanimator deck. Again, it's slightly favourable for us in general, but obviously they have some hands that slap pretty hard, and we are slightly weaker against them than normal because we're running the Leylines. So I think I'm probably going to go back to Fairy Macabres after this, because I think the blue-black Reanimator deck is the best deck in the format still. It's putting up more challenge top 8s than any other deck, and it's very powerful. So I think Fairy Macabre is good for that. Fairy Macabre isn't always good enough to beat Ouphe's spells is the problem. If they have mana floating, it doesn't work because of the Jack-O-Lantern. So that's just a thing you have to deal with. But Ouphe's spells, despite being the 3rd most played deck, has only put up 1 challenge top 8, so it's massively underperforming right now. So maybe we don't have to worry about it too much. Anyway, this is the deck. The main deck is absolutely settled in my mind. This is what I would play day in and day out. I think by the time this video goes live, I would have played this in a paper tournament a few days ago. So hopefully that went well for me. But yeah, I absolutely love this deck. If we're cutting the ley lines, we get 3 Fairy Macabre and an additional Collector Ouphe if we want it. Or we have 1 floating spot that we can adjust. Maybe have another Duress or whatever. There's definitely some options we have available there. But yep, that's Greenblack Turbodepths. If you enjoyed this league as much as I did, by all means check out my Patreon. I also run the Turbodepths Discord, which is just my Discord, which is linked in the description below. So come by, say hello, ask all your questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. You can also play budget versions of this deck. You don't have to be a Bayou deck. And I have a free guide to budget Turbodepths on my Patreon as well. So you don't even need to pay me any money for that. You can just find the free guide. I will be updating that at some point, probably end of the month or next month. I'll probably update it again because things have changed a little bit since I last did it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.